No.
we've had this conversation kind of over chat for a little bit, but I've always been curious around the kind of the dream of doing everything inside of BIM, doing everything inside of Revit, as opposed to breaking out to AutoCAD for schematics.
Yep.
And when I've asked in my previous company, I asked the guys to look at it, and there's always been pushback on restrictions on styling, or just it's not, quite like a full drafting tool. And so I was, but it's really tricky to then tie those schematics in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Get the data of the schematics together with what you're doing for the physical plans and elevations and everything that's happening inside of BIM. So
Yeah.
I'd love you to make a case basically for
Sure.
doing schematics in Revit and get your take on it. And then I am curious to know if you are actually tying the data in somehow between what you're drawing in schematic land versus what's in the actual the model that's been presented for the physical space.
Yeah. So there's a there's a lot to say about it, and I can't say that it's really, I thought about whether or not I want to continue using Revit for schematics, and we call them risers at our office. I guess it depends on what you're doing, what terminology you use, but schematics, riser diagrams. I guess it depends on what level you're going to. So I am, as a consultant engineer, just doing conceptual drawings. I'm not, doing shop drawing level, schematics where we're doing cable tags, wire, labeling the wires and showing the cable pull schedule. We're typically just showing, like, again, conceptual point-to-point schematics, just to show the flow. And then it's usually a lot of that detail is somewhat called out in a sequence of operations or in the spec sections that really explains what that riser does. Integrator, and you are putting together shop drawings, Revit could do it. It's got a lot of smarts. It would take a lot of setting up. Somebody would have to spend a lot of time to build the family, build the properties, build the scheduling to actually get it to function efficiently. But once it's done, yes, it's a powerhouse, and it makes things super easy. I would say, the biggest thing is scheduling, not having to physically count components. I mean, with the families, and I don't know how familiar you are with Revit, but in CAD, you've used it
Pretty
before?
familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in CAD, and I'm the opposite. I started out in CAD for the first couple of years, and then I quickly went to Revit. We were one of the firm that I worked for was one of the very first adopters of Revit, so we've been using it for quite a while. I haven't touched CAD in, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now. I used to do my schematics in CAD, and there are some benefits to it, which I'll show you here in a second. But CAD uses, if I'm not mistaken, it's blocks, I believe, as their equivalent to families. I can't remember the term, but it's
Correct.
yeah,
You're correct.
yeah. But there's no smarts to that. You can't just create properties that can be then scheduled or circuited and all that stuff. So that's the pro to Revit. Unfortunately, though, Revit's not designed for low voltage, so there's no preset, families or anything related to AV, which I'm sure you know. So anybody getting into Revit's going to have to start from scratch, and that's kind of what we've done. And what I'll show you here is kind of what we do. From a high level, 10th, I guess, but there's a lot. I have a list of probably 20 things that I think would be super beneficial to add as far as doing POE calcs, wattage, tap calcs for amps, to where I just lay out everything, circuit it together like I would a receptacle in Revit, and it would tell me the POE requirements for that network circuit, or it'll tell me the wattage for that. But that's more on the plan side. So if it's beneficial, I can share my screen and just kind of show you in Revit what we kind of use it for and how that works. Are you familiar? I guess you said you've used Revit, but are you pretty familiar with schedules and how to create a schedule and stuff?
Yeah, correct. So I had just a bit of context. I ran a consultancy company. We had a team of about 8 guys, and kind of 5 of those were running Revit for over 4 years or something. So my background was on the AutoCAD side of things. So I came from doing schematics and all the drawings in AutoCAD, and I sort of oversaw the implementation of Revit, but I wasn't on the tools, so to speak. But I'm pretty familiar with what Revit's capabilities are as far as creating schedules and drawings and everything. So we were running that as our main kind of pipeline for a number of years.
Okay, so I guess would it be beneficial then, I guess, for you on this call to show you just kind of like how we develop a riser and how it ties into the scheduling and the plan and just kind of how we use Revit, I guess? Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
kind of what
So
you're
I
looking
just
for
want
on
to
this?
I
Or?
want to lock in
Okay.
on your language specific. So when you say riser, are you talking about like what I would call a single line? So you have
One
when I think
lines,
about a
you know,
schematic, one
yeah,
lines. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
pretty
what we're
much.
talking
Yeah.
about. Okay.
I've been on a couple forums asking, hey, what's the preferred, terminology or nomenclature for a one line that's for AV? You want to call it a schematic diagram. So my mentor, he's an electrical PE and does AV stuff, but he was telling me like he's always used riser diagram for the schematic for AV, just because typically when you're thinking riser, you're thinking multi-level, like a distributed antenna system or backbone cabling for network that's going from level to level. So you're showing the riser diagram of how the backbone cabling goes from floor to floor. AV is typically room by room, but sometimes the room goes multiple levels, or sometimes that one circuit reaches multiple levels for a speaker. So he just said we use riser because it's easy, it makes sense, and we don't have different names for different things. So, but I've never had an integrator or somebody come back and say, what the heck's this? So they usually get the point. But yes, to answer your question, I tend to ramble, but to answer your question, a one-line riser, same thing, or schematic. So.
Cool. Well, yeah, if you want to just, I guess give us a look at what you're doing there and how that ties in, that'd be really cool.
Show you, let me get some stuff out of the way here. So I got a couple projects, again, constantly changing things, and a lot of this stuff is strictly, again, for the riser. So when it comes to just laying stuff out on a floor plan, I don't really, let me see if I can show you a floor plan here. I got two projects open. It's hard to know because it doesn't tell you which project. I wish you can color code the tabs, but you probably can. In a floor plan, I use the floor plan strictly just to lay out where devices are going to go. Now, we started, depending on the project size, we do a lot of assisted living, so sometimes we can't fit an RCP plan and the floor plan on the same sheet, nor do we want to double up the sheet count. So we'll typically show ceiling devices on the floor plan. But all this stuff is just conceptual location. You're going to need, in this room over here, 6 speakers, a projector screen, and then really just the rough end locations is what we're calling out. But none of this is scheduled. This all ties back to the riser diagram. So if you want to know what goes in the special outlet TP, which we're not even using outlets anymore, and TP, or what SRO1 is or what VPO1 is, the riser is the brains. It's everything, the central repository for everything related to that room in regards to AV. It's what the integrator is going to look at. So for that room, for instance, let's see, this is a large conference room. So this is typical, well, this is an old style of what our riser diagrams used to look like. So from a standpoint of schematics, not in the sense of drawing the actual riser. It's actually a very tedious, create snapping points for families. So like, for instance, let's say this DSP here, all we did is we created a family block, which is just this outline shell. And then we just added text so that I could go in there and modify, because, every DSP has different inputs and outputs. So instead of making this box with all the listed inputs and outputs for that exact model, we were just doing it on the fly. So if I wanted to use a Biamp X400 or Tessera Forte, I would go through and edit this every single time, and that can be a little nuanced. But the same thing happens in CAD. Now, what I can do, though, in this is I can create a connection point in Revit right here, which we're not using here, just FYI. But you could create a connection point so that this snaps to it, this wire, and then when I drag this box around, that wire will follow it. Now, you can see, though, how that would get very messy quick when you have 12 inputs going into it, so we don't use that at all. We just are simply doing line work. I'll create a detail line, I'll select the type of cable that I want to use based on the legend. We have a riser legend that says what each of these line weights and line styles refer to. So if I want to do a line cable, or a mic line cable, I'll just do that and I'll just draw it. And then after I get done on the last step, the very last thing I do is I'll go through and I'll dimension everything and I'll equalize it to where everything's equally spaced apart just to make it look pretty, right? So that part of it is tedious, but that's the same when Revit or in CAD. I never had a difference there. The one thing in CAD that made it kind of nice is doing line splits. Like this, I'm going to do is say I just have a line going down and I want to show that that's a separate line. I'll just use the slice command. Excuse me. And I have to just manually do that. And then when I do the next one, I have to, and it's very tedious. You can imagine doing that for every single line. You spend a good, just in creating the lines and then cleaning them up to where they're all uniform and spaced evenly and that everything has a break in, it's evenly spaced. That takes up a good 30 minutes to an hour. However, I found, again, the same issue with CAD. I haven't seen a single program that easily does that in the way that you want it to look, So that, to me, is a non-argument, in my opinion. You're going to have to create these lines regardless to fit it on the sheet. Now, what we started doing, which, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Each of these items here are a detail item. So if you click on it, they are considered detail items. So you can create different families of different styles, right? They can be detail items. They could be electrical items. When you go to create your schedule, and I apologize, I didn't have this like scripted, so I'm just kind of winging it here. But
yeah, you're good, man. This is great.
When you go to create your schedule, this is 22. We used all different versions, so I got to remember where it's at.
Oh, it's so great how they change it every year, isn't it?
Right.
That's one of the wonderful things about Revit.
I swear it was in. Hold on just a second. View. I think it's view. Yes. There you go. So when you go to create a schedule, you can create it based off of these types of families. So we use detail items. So we'll use a detail item schedule. And that's the only place where I use detail items is on my riser diagram. So when I build my schedule pulls exclusively from what's on the riser diagram. And sometimes, though, you have a device like this here, where it's like, say, a Vadio IntelliShot with their one link extension device that comes as a package. So it's one SKU that I need to schedule, but it comes with two devices that I need to show on the riser diagram. So I have my main device is PTZ01. Oh, different window. In my properties, I call out the model number there, which this all gets scheduled on that family. This thing, though, I don't want it to schedule, but I still want it to show. So I had to create a display and AV equipment schedule parameter. So when I create my schedule, I can just say anything that has this checked, put it in the schedule. If it doesn't have it checked, don't schedule it, right? And then so that way they know they can just read included with PTZO and they know what that is. That's just, means and methods. I don't need to, get in the weeds on this. Like I said, conceptual. Never had somebody come back and say, what does this mean? They know it comes with that SKU. So, that being said,
that's cool. That makes sense.
Yeah. So when I create a schedule, and I guess I can go ahead and do that. Let's do it on this project here. Close some stuff out. Okay, home project. Move this over here. Okay, so this is the home project. So what I did on this before you got on is I had a project. I just created a home project, and I imported our most recent families that we use, the most common ones that I use. You see like the different sound bars and stuff. I try to make it look like common ones that I use, but it's not all of them. Gooseneck mics, any gooseneck mic I use uses the same annotation. There's no standard on the annotation. It's all about the tag, the text tag on there. That's what gets scheduled. So so I wanted to delete this. Like a TV with a HDMI transmitter. And let me know if I'm, telling you anything that's not helpful at all, but
No, this is all good, man. This is good. This is great.
okay. So here's all my detail items. So like I said, it's a family, which is here. And then I have all my detail item families. When I create them, they're listed as riser. I name them riser dash whatever they are. So I know that it goes on my riser diagram, because there's also other AV details or electrical details or whatever that they do, like distribution panels and stuff like that. So in this case, I have a flat panel display. I want to make it an 86-inch Panasonic. Now, of course, I always use caps, but I don't want to go back and delete that. So TH86, whatever. All right. And all right, so I have my TV. I'll create a detail line. That's the other thing I have, which is probably similar in CAD if you've done it. I don't know. Some integrators I noticed used all the style and they just use different colors because they print in color, but we never print color. I have to do everything in black and white. So to distinguish it, the cables are different line weights. But I have an HDMI input. Now, what we did recently is, I don't know if you noticed, that's why I used the old one. We have a new one here. So you see the old one is the top one. This is what we recently did. So before, what we were doing is I would actually show, let's see, special outlet, probably not even on here. In the other riser diagram that you saw how I had like an HDMI connector here, a USB or a RJ45. We were showing this so that I wouldn't have to list the input on every box. I could keep the box smaller so that I could fit more on the project, on the riser diagram sheet. But that means that somebody has to look at this and say, well, what kind of connection is this? Then they have to go back to the schedule here and say, oh, well, that is a, APAC RJ45 connector. So we thought, well, maybe we should get rid of those and try to find a way to eliminate this schedule or keep it down as small as possible. So that's why we went to adding these smart families so I can turn on and off the connectors that I don't want. So I can just have that one HDMI. Yeah. And then it's got, the one thing I haven't done yet, though, is and this is all new, is I haven't created a snapping point. See how I don't know if I'm in the center line of that or not. I need to create.
Yeah.
But essentially, the family consists of this as one family, the TV, and then these are nested families. So there's a family with, what is it, 12 or 8, 9 different nested families within it that I can turn on the visibility of those nested families. So this HDMI input is a family within the other family. So, but let me continue on here. So I'm going to create similar, and I'm going to make that a, let's do, so I've been going through creating a library of different families. So I have my HDMI DVR receiver. Now, see, here's where I'm going to show you all the tedious stuff here, just so you know. This is how I end up having to do it. I kind of guess the center point on this because I don't have a snap to, but what I can do is I can click on this. I can hit MV, the move command. I can find a snapping point here because this is the center. Snap it to the end of that line, and then just kind of move it to the area that I want to, and then pull that line back. So kind of, I'm just showing you all the tedious stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
We'll do a quick just receiver on the other end. Now these will line up, from the top, so they'll snap and line up, so I don't have to worry about that because all my inputs and outputs it's the same family with just different labeled, inputs and outputs. These here, just so you see it, it's a big family. So when all of them are on, there's 48 of these on the left side and 48 on the right side that I can label the type of the connector, whether it's an RJ45, it's a Phoenix, cap screw, label is on the back of the device. And I have to manually go through there. So, I can add HDMI is the connection type, and this is a ingest port, and then I make it visible. Boom. And then now it's there, and then I just have to drag the box down a little bit. I wanted the ability to customize the size of the box so I can squeeze it if I need to really fit in some space, or if I want to have a space in between these, because I really want to make it look nice.
So in AutoCAD, you have the kind of
that one blank and turn on the fourth input. Yeah.
Sorry, just a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
My connection's a little slow, so I might be a little bit behind. In AutoCAD, you have the kind of concept of a model space where you lay everything out, and then you have a paper space, which is like a window into that model. And through that dynamic, you're able to kind of dynamically adjust that window so you can make the schematic as big as you want, and you bring the window out so that everything can fit. That is not how things play out here, or do you have that ability to dynamically kind of scale onto the page?
Yeah. So let's say this was it. I had a TV with a HDMI, HD-based TV receiver, and a transmitter at the other end. And that was my whole design. Now, we are currently just in the riser diagram view. So you have your views, which has your floor plans, all your different things. This is a detail view right here. And so I want to put that onto an actual sheet. Let's say it's a audio visual. I'm going to use that term again, riser diagram. That's my sheet number. So this is the sheet space that you're talking about. Instead of being able to tab between it down, I think on CAD it's like in the bottom or whatever, you can tab between the sheet space or it's in one of the corners. In this case, you have just your details here, and then I just drag them on as I need it. And so that's how big that window is. So what I was working in right here, that's how big that whole window is right here. And I can just drag it. Now to make that smaller, I just have to consolidate my stuff.
Yeah, so there's no physical, you can't kind of scale that all down.
Scale it.
Like or would you have to kind of do that on the in the actual on the detail page?
Well, let's see. So I'm going to try that. I've never tried that before, but I think it's going to try to screw things up because the problem is the text is sized for 1/8 inch scale on prints. So if I scale it, it's going to screw up the text size and stuff. But technically, let's see, I can use the scale command.
I mean, that's a very good point. I guess maybe it's probably is built like that for a reason, so you don't end up with drawings with unreadable text, which is very easy to do in AutoCAD if you're just scaling that window in and out.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the challenge in the whole thing is how do I fit, all of this on one sheet? Most of the time, most of my time is spent on riser diagrams and just getting the information to fit on one sheet in as concise a manner as possible. Now, I don't think any integrator would ever fit all of this on one sheet because they have to also incorporate their cable tags, and that's where they end up using the tildes and showing how, okay, this cable, and then they tag it goes to endpoint A2 on the other sheet, and then so you could do that, and you could do that with smarts. It's just I don't have the need to do that, so I haven't dug into it. But as far as just getting the conceptual idea on there, fitting it onto a sheet, and then getting that scheduled so that all your pieces of equipment are accounted for, that's where this comes in handy. So yeah, I have my schedule, or I have my riser. So now I want to create a schedule. I want to make it a detail pull. I want to pull that as detail items. And then I pull the family, the properties of each family, the parameters within that property window I want to schedule it based on that. So I want it to display an AV equipment schedule. I want that to be scheduled. I want the description of it, the equipment tag. That's the three, like DVD01 or FPD86 that I use. I want to use a manufacturer, model, and I also use type comments just so I can add notes on the schedule. I want to filter this schedule by the equipment tag. I'm sorry, by AV equipment schedule, that it exists and that equals yes. So now if a family displays an AV schedule, and then I want to sort by the equipment tag. So I always alphabetize it by the FPD86 or DVDR1 or DSP01. Ascending, I don't want to do now this is where what comes in handy for contractors. They might want to itemize every single instance of that in the schedule. In this case, I always turn that off, but I'm going to leave it on for now. The formatting, I don't want displays in the AV schedule to be visible on my actual printed schedule.
So why do you turn the itemization off?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Partly for liability. You don't want to, so as consultants, we want to show the information that's needed without trying to say too much and dig a hole in for ourselves and say, hey, we told you 5 speakers here, but you actually needed 7 on the drawings or something. I don't know. So really it's just this schedule that I put out is simply to just tell the integrator, what does this, I wish I could zoom in right now, but I can't with this window open, but what does that tag in the TV mean? That's all I'm using it for, not how many do you need to buy. That's up to you to look at the floor plan. Yeah, that's for them to look at the floor plan and say FPD86 in this room, that room, that room. I need 3, So, but I'm gonna leave it open there. I don't want displays in AV equipment schedule on because that's not information pertinent to the integrator or the people reading this. They don't need to know that it's on my schedule. That's just for me to schedule it. So I'm gonna make that a hidden field. And then description, capitalizing everything, but I'll just do one just to show you. And then the equipment tag, manufacturer, model, type comments, I end up everything's caps and design, so I have to go through there and manually change that. And then appearance, we have our own little appearance that we use. Body. And so there's my schedule. Now, what I need to do is bring that onto a sheet. So now it pops up in my schedules. There it is, audiovisual equipment schedule. You need to make sure I'm in it. See, that's one thing is if I'm in this view right now, so I'm actually in that detail view, I can't drag something onto it like a schedule. I have to actually click out of it. So I'm on the sheet view. And then I'm putting that on the sheet of paper there. That looks like my appearance is wrong. So I'm going to change something here. There we go. That looks right. Now, unfortunately, nothing's visible right now. So I got to figure out why I'm not seeing anything. Let's make sure that the phase is new. Okay. So this is the new family that I haven't actually edited properly, but it does not have that checkbox down here, displays an AV equipment schedule. So what I have to do sometimes, and you have to get used to doing this because you're having to create these families every single time. So once you create it once, so you use it again, it's stored in a library. But I need to go through here. So now I'm editing the actual family. I'm on a whole new project now, just editing the family of the flat panel display. I'm going to create a new have it as a shared parameter, displays an AV equipment schedule. I don't know if you want me to talk about shared parameters. That's a whole other topic, but essentially when I create a family, and let's say I create a family, and I manually type in every single one of these parameters, these types, I can export this whole parameter, all of these parameters as a shared parameter. So that way, when I create a new family, instead of having to manually type in all this stuff manually and tell it what discipline it is, I can just have it as a shared parameter that's sorted, and I can have it, and I can just click on it and say add to this family. So there's plugins and stuff like Parameter Jammer that'll do it automatically, but that's a whole other thing. But now that I got that added, displays an AV equipment schedule, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to load that back into the project. I think it was the home project we were doing. I don't want to save that because I don't want to save anything I'm doing here. Overwrite the existing. Okay, so now when I look at that sheet that I have, the riser diagram sheet, the schedule should have that on there. If not, then there's probably something else, which it's not. Now we got to figure out why. I noticed earlier that there's this thing on here. I want to say there was 2 of those. No. Yeah, but you see how it says displays an AV equipment schedule there. So now it's actually on my sheet. I can actually click on that, make that a hidden field, and it takes it off the field. So that's what that was doing earlier. Now, why this is not pulling up is, of course, probably because I'm not connected to VPN and it's not pulling everything. But let me try one other thing here. Jesus, dog.
It's the demo law. Whenever you go to demonstrate something, is always when something's always harder than it needs to be.
Let me try something here. So that's the thing with Revit, is that there's 100 different things that could be the problem, and there's like 99 different ways to fix it, but only one way is the right way. So the first thing I always check is, okay, am I in the right phase? Is this set for the right phase? Because it'll only show new devices, so it is on the right phase. There were a bunch of, let's see this right here. I'm going to add on that old display. See if that fixes it. See, it's not scheduling anything. So here, I'll show you this. I know one that's working. Okay. So this project, I have my schedule right here.
Nice, I see.
Yeah, so that FPD 86 would be listed here. It categorizes it by the tag because I have it alphabetized. So like I said, if we click onto that schedule, this is the schedule that we're just looking at. It's displays and schedule equals yes is done by ascending. So we do it by alphabetical of the tag ascending. And I could do itemize every instance. Boom. And then it shows a single one of those that I've placed on a riser diagram somewhere. So now the problem though with this, and I'll show you a reason why we don't do that, is obviously for this project, if you look in the rack, because everything, well, not everything, but the majority of stuff that's in the design is in the rack, and there's not nearly as many devices in this rack as we see on the schedule here. And this project is small enough. It's only 2 conference rooms, so there's only 2 TV or 4 TVs and a projection screen, yet we're seeing, geez, a bunch of TVs, right? So why is that doing it? It's mainly because of phasing. We had to do phasing on this project. So it's showing every phase in the project that has a riser diagram. And that's where, and I guess this is a cool thing to bring up too, is that when you have a project with phasing, maybe I want to have an equipment schedule that just pulls the equipment that's on this riser diagram, but on this riser diagram here, that's an update where I got rid of some stuff and I added this beamforming ceiling microphone. I want a whole new equipment schedule that shows all of this stuff here as a separate line item. So then what I could do is I can click into one of these families. Once you do this once, you never have to do it again. I can add a property similar to that displays an AV equipment schedule. I can add a property that says like phase 1, or like I can have one that says, I'll just create it real quick. We'll call it phase. And it's a text parameter and it's just text. So are you familiar with type and instance parameters? You want me to mention that at all? Or
Yeah, if you refresh.
Yeah, so
Refresh us.
A type is a parameter that's in the property. Oh, I'll show you in just a second. But so what I did is I created that phase, and I'm gonna load this into the project. I think that was on the training project one. I don't want to save it because I'm not trying to save over my work. But okay, so now all of these families, all of these boxes are the exact same family that I just edited. I just have edited the properties of these families to have it, but the family itself is the exact same family. So that phase that I added right here is on every single one of these now. Didn't mean to double click on that, but you get the point. So
yeah,
there's the phase. So because I use the same family, I just edit the properties to make it unique. So what I could do is I could say this one's in phase 1. Well, I guess that's a bad one to do because that one's not listed in the schedule. But I can have this one as like phase 1, and then I could have stuff in this riser diagram. Imagine I click on every single box. Well, I could do this. Select all instances visible in view. That just grabs the one at the same type, and I can change that to 2. And so now on my schedule, I can add a parameter to this equipment schedule. I can have fields, and I can create a new one right here. Sorry, that says phase, and it was a text parameter. Text. It's a type parameter, which I'll show you in just a second. And so now, then I could add a filter that says for this one, I want the phase to equal 1. So on this schedule, it's only going to show things that have the phase that equal 1. And then on the other, I could create a new schedule that has all the exact same, fields, parameter, everything, but it just has one difference that this equals 2. And then so now I can have 2 separate AV schedules that auto-populate, and all I have to do is just click on this and tell it if it's phase 1 or phase 2. And that's it. Now, type and instance parameters, though, when you click on a box, anything that automatically pops up here is an instance parameter because it only affects that one box. Even though this, well, let's see, USB 01, these two are the exact same family. So the family is the general box, which is what I edited earlier and added the phase, but I've created different types of that family. So these are all the different types of that family that I created. When I do a type parameter, then when I click on that family and edit the type, it's going to edit that parameter for everything that's a USB S01. Now, I might have USB S01 on this riser diagram, but I also have it on, I'm going to close this project out because I don't even need it. This out too. I don't want to save that. Okay. Let me close that out too. Okay. So I have USB S01 on this one, but I also have USB S01 on this one. I want this to be phase 1. I want this one to be phase 2, but they're the exact same family type. So anything I do to this one, so if I edit the type here and I change this to USB whatever, it's also going to affect it there because it's the exact same family and family type.
Yes.
What I want to do is I want to keep that same family type, but change it, the instance. So what I could do is when I add that phase, I'm going to click back into the family. So now I'm editing that family up here at the top. I'm editing that general box 1 family. I have all my different types that I've created. So if I go to USB S01, there's the tag that I made. I can make that say 1. And I want to add a new parameter I want it to be an instance parameter, and I'm going to call it phase 2, just so it's easily to distinguish. And it's a text. It's a text field. So load that into the project. Write existing. Okay, so now I can click on this and I have this parameter here, and I could say this one is phase 2, but this one is phase 1. Right?
Gotcha.
And then so when I go to create my equipment schedule, I have a field. I'm going to add a new field. I'm going to call it phase 2 because that's what I'm going to label that one as. But it's an instance parameter field. So that last one I did was a type. This one's going to be an instance parameter text. And so now on the sorting and grouping, I can add phase 2, not sorting and grouping, my bad. The filtering. I can add phase 2, and phase 2 equals 2 on this one, or phase 1 equals. I know it's a lot of information I'm throwing at you.
No, it's like good. It's good. I like to say I have I have worked with it in the past, so I'm following along. That's good.
Okay, yeah. I just got done training an intern over the summer, and I felt like I'm just having a drink from a fire hose, the whole time. And it's one of those things that unless you are doing it repeatedly, that it's until you get your hands on, it's hard to retain it all. But essentially what I'm trying to convey, though, is just that, the smarts of having the smart families, as Revit calls it, that you can really get granular on how you organize your sheets, creating different schedules, super easy. Because once you do this, like what I've been having to do as far as like clicking into this family and editing it, you only have to do that once. Once you create that family and you have it stored, every time you create a new project, all those properties are in there in case you need them. You might not have phases on one project, you might have it on the next, but at least that phase parameter is in that family now. And that's where transitioning from CAD to Revit is hard, is that the first few couple years, unless you have a staff of guys that are what we call VDC guys that can create all these families and parameters that you need, it's going to take a while because every project you're going to be creating these one by one as you need them. And then as you get further, then it becomes very efficient.
So I can see what you're doing there as far as being able to then, from your riser diagram, you're able to create a lovely schedule that, and for 100 that all of everything in the riser is into that schedule. Do you then link what is in that schedule or what is in the riser drawing to what you have modeled into the actual on the building side, or is that you do keep those things separate?
Like what I show here,
comparison schedule or something?
Yeah, it's pretty separate. No, but there's some overlap. So what I was talking about earlier, as far as like circuiting, so with receptacles and stuff, if I add an electrical receptacle, here, I'll just do that real quick. I think I have them loaded. Well, shoot. I'm going to just add some receptacles here. So you can circuit receptacles and you can have them tied to a panel. This is all built into Revit, though. This is like, it comes factory because Revit knows if you're putting receptacles, you got to tie them to a panel. You got to, tell it what circuit it's on and stuff like that. However, what I'm looking to do, and I've been working on it, is adding a circuiting capability to this, because within the family itself, if you actually click into the family and edit the family, you can actually add, like this is the 3D of it's just a generic just cone for the speaker, right? You can add a circuit, electrical connector to it, which I think is what this right here is, and then that allows me to circuit it. But I want to circuit it to where it maybe goes to a network switch in the rack, and I just chain these all together, and then within the properties.
Sorry, Jeremy. Can I just sorry interrupt? I've got some a little person talking to me in here.
Sure,
One moment.
no problem. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries. But yeah, eventually, let's see, you could circuit these, chain them together, and then within the properties of this family, I can say, okay, this, I'll have like a wattage tap, text parameter, and but just based on the design, I'll tell it what tap to be at. We've gotten to the point now where we have like I've created different common speakers that I use, whether they're JBL, Extron, Crestron, rank signs, anything. I've kind of made them as I go, and I made them like the 3D realistic look. So essentially, it's hard to, I should have structured this, but I was kind of winging it here. That speaker is represented right here, total of 6, as one family type, which is a detail item that gets scheduled, and I show how it draws everything we just talked about. It's also represented here as a communications device family. 2 completely different families. A detail item is a 2D element that is used to go on a 2D space, like a sheet space for a riser diagram. It's a detail. It's just like a detail item of a light pole and how it gets built into the ground. You show the rebar and the concrete and all that stuff, just like a section view. It's all 2D. Communications devices, audiovisual devices, stuff like that are 3D elements that when you go to edit the family, it's actually a 3D element that you can place in the space. You also have to add the annotation, of course, to it. So we use, well, this is an old annotation, but well, I guess you can see it from this view here. So we have our annotation symbol. The circle with the half shaded square means it's a speaker. Where turn on that shows you based on 50% of the coverage pattern. So if it's 110 degree, then the radius is 50% of that, just for continuity or consistency. So this is a 6 dB coverage cone. So anything within 6 dB, I can, it makes it easy to lay out. I know we're getting off the riser diagram topic here, but just kind of shows the smarts of that. And that's a 3D element too. So I can actually, I don't think this is a 3D project. Actually, it's a CAD background. I just kind of made the walls just so I can see the project. But yeah, essentially, if you had a real 3D project, then you could actually see the cones of that in 3D and see where it's covering, stuff like that. But this is a CAD background. This is a DWG background laid over, and then I just drew walls just so I can host things to it, because this has to be hosted to a wall. So this is kind of a weird project. But
I guess, how often are the architects not working in BIM these days? What's the percentage of projects where you're getting CAD
probably
versus BIM?
5%, if that, of the projects that they're in CAD. Typically, it's civil projects because civil still works in CAD. So if it's like a municipal, we do a lot of like softball complexes and baseball complexes with like 10 fields. Those will be civil starting, so that's CAD, and we just import in the background the DWG. But to answer your question, architects, 99% of them are gone to Revit by now, so everything is 3D. I heard that Revit, though, is not extremely popular in Europe, though, yet either. So I don't know, you're in New Zealand area, kind of way east of that, Australia, I guess, right?
Yeah, Revit is very dominant in New Zealand.
What Revit is?
Revit is, yeah, for architects, okay. Yeah, very dominant. There's like ArchiCAD, there's other BIM software that I know of other architects, but really Autodesk is pretty dominant.
Yeah, Autodesk CAD and then Autodesk Revit. We use, like I said, Revit 99% of the time. I just want Europe use. Hey, yeah. Sorry, my dog's stepping on things. Go. But I was talking to the lady with ease the other day, and she said that nobody uses Revit over there for the most part. But yeah, I mean, you know, out there. But I just got back home like 5 minutes before this meeting, so I was kind of winging it. Did you have any like specific questions or anything?
Yeah, so sorry, just with the receptacles there. So you put the receptacles in and you're saying that they relate back to a panel. So is that something where you might use that for AV specific cabling, whether that was like Cat6 back to a patch panel or HDMI from a wall plate to another wall plate or something like that can then be scheduled out, or what's the go there?
I'm only thinking of doing that for so there's two ways I could do it. I was thinking about for like, so if I had 6 speakers in this room and I want to circuit it on one zone, that I could just use the circuiting feature within Revit and draw the actual circuit, and you connect them one by one because they have a hosting element within the family that allows you to snap to it, and it's a circuiting thing. That I could do that, and then I can tell it at the end of the circuit, like what I did to these receptacles. Come on. That when I go to modify, where is it? I'm not used to working on this. Here it is, electrical circuit. That I could click on a panel. In this case, I added an electrical panel here. So I had these speakers circuit to this amplifier is what I was thinking of. And then could tell me, if I go to I'm not an electrical guy, so bear with me here, but if I go to the panel schedule, well, yeah, that it would show me, hey, circuit 1 of this 4-channel amplifier is circuited for these 6 speakers in this conference room, and based on the wattage tap that I put in the properties of those speakers, so I said this was 23 watts or whatever, and this one's 23, that it totals, that sums that up because it's all in one circuit, and tells me 70 volt, it's 150 watts is what you need, and then I could just go specify an amp to fit that need. I thought about doing it that way, but I don't think that that's going to work. I've tried it. The circuiting elements that Revit has made they're not open enough to where you can change them from where they're currently set to like electrical or mechanical. You can't just say, hey, I want this to go to a random panel that has these properties. It has to be an electrical panel. So
right, gotcha.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is like, well, I could make this, if I drew 6 of these speakers, and I had them connected or whatever, this is just line work. So this isn't going to do it either, because this is just a detail line. It has no smarts in it. It doesn't know that these are connected. Revit doesn't know that these are actually connected. I just drew it on here. So the only way to have that kind of smarts would be to I'm sorry. There is a way to do it. I remember I took a class with I haven't seen a benefit to this, to be honest with you, as far as time saving, but you could create a space. So like you see how when I hover over this, there's an X. So this is a room, but you can actually create a space. Let's see, and maybe it's view. Anyway, there's a way that you can create, like I can create a room here, or an area, I guess. There it is. Yeah, I can just do area. Pretty sure it's space, but yeah, screw it. Anyway, you could create a space the same way I create a room here, and I can select this space or whatever, and I can say, I want this to be a room. And then anything within this triangle, I want it to count as one. Just like I do a schedule, I can create a schedule that says anything that's within this zone that has the wattage tap parameter, I want you to total all those up and tell me what it is. There's a guy that created a Revit for AV class. I can't think of his name, but he was from the Pro Synod website. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah. I'm
Synodcon
familiar
or
with it.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his name is Jerry or something, but he kind of dove into that a little bit more. I haven't found a need so much for it. I mean, I guess it would be nice because then if I just add six speakers in there and I tap it, it just tells me what my total is. But usually we're talking low numbers like 7.5 watts, and I can just say 6 times 7.5. That's what I need. It's not a lot of time
Yeah.
there, but I don't
I
see that as
think
a
you said
huge
something.
time saving.
Yeah, I think you said something important there, which is around whether it saves time or not. Like, there is
Yeah.
some amazing, there's definitely some amazing things you can do, but are you going to is it going to take you 10 times longer to build it?
Hmm.
You could tie things together to an incredible amount, which would be super cool, but is it benefiting the final output? Does it benefit the project? If it's, is it slower? And I think you with Revit, you do have to have a bit of a pragmatic hat on of, is this level of whatever it is, automation or connection or data massaging that I'm doing actually kind of is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak?
Yeah. No, exactly. We've had one project that I actually use BIM. I'm talking about the entire company that I can think of in my, almost 10 years there. One project where we actually use BIM to its full potential. The whole purpose of BIM is that when you place a receptacle, that that family is so smart that it says, okay, for every receptacle, you need a 4x4 box. It needs 4 screws. It needs this much rubber cement. It needs this much everything. And it schedules all that stuff for you. We had one project where we were actually asked to go that detail into it but it wasn't AV, it was just electrical. But the whole point of it is that the schedule, the AV equipment schedule that I did here, that the actual build schedule for the entire project would list every single thing that it would take to build that building. How many gallons of rubber cement, how many yards of concrete is it going to take, how many receptacles, how many screws is it going to take, and it would schedule all that. But building the families to actually, you know, to calculate that, it's a lot of time. We spent so much time doing that, but it was something that they had to have. So they paid us for it. But 99% of the projects, we don't need that much detail. We just need to get the point across enough to where the integrator knows what they need to buy, what needs to be connected, what goes where, and that the architects, sometimes we get asked for what they call a level of detail, like 500 or whatever. I can't remember the numbers, but they'll ask for a really high level of detail in the 3D space to where I actually have to model the TV to where it looks like with the bezel and it has the right material on the face of that matte gloss finish. That the speakers and everything are dimensioned exactly how they want because they want to create a 3D model and show the person, in a 3D look like. Very few and far between. We could go to that detail all the time, but we very rarely do because there's no point in doing it. And that's where, like you were saying, we have to outweigh, is it beneficial? Is it going to help anybody to do this? Is it saving me any time to do this? How much time am I going to spend to actually create this? And is it actually going to, reward us in any way? And a lot of it doesn't. I like Revit because it's, once you're established in it, it's super easy. Just copy paste. I just take these families and I just drop them where I need them and it schedules it. And that's most of what I need to do. The only thing that's kind of tedious is drawing these lines. And that's about it. Getting this, organized. Okay,
So,
how's this going to look?
yeah. So would you say if you were talking to another consultancy or let's say an integrator, and they're currently using CAD and they were thinking about moving over to BIM, would you say the biggest? I think you made a comment before. One of the biggest hurdles is really the family generation. Like, is that one of the biggest pieces? Do you think, or what are the big obstacles or the big moats to people getting on
That's
board with Revit?
that's it. Honestly, it's these detail items that I've created over the years, which we again we started redoing them all. So where is it? General box. Oh, that's right. I closed out the old one. But you saw on the other project, I had like every single Extron type of transmitter and receiver. But I spent all that time doing that. But next year, those are going to be discontinued and a new one's going to come out. But is it really are the physical inputs and outputs of the device actually going to change? Probably not. They might change some guts of it, the way it looks, but I don't care about that. So I found that it actually was beneficial to go through and actually create these families here, all of these different families. I do a lot of Extron stuff. I like Extron, but what I did is I built it around Extron, but typically there's a 1-for-1, Crestron and Extron device that I just have to maybe rename a part DM instead of XTP, or whatever, or NAV instead of DM, or DMX, NVX, whatever. You get the point. So, but yeah, a lot of time is spent on just creating this. But once it's done, then I just drop it where I need it. It schedules it, and boom, I'm good. I spend most of my time just organizing that riser sheet to look pretty and to fit it all in one sheet. And that's honestly the most challenging point. I think somebody would benefit greatly by spending a lot of time and creating a lot of these families. But where I see that being utilized is companies like, I went to InfoComm this year, and I noticed there were a lot of booths of companies selling their, one-line schematic tool. Hey, use our tool. We have all these families built, but you have to use our software to create the riser diagram. If somebody were to just create these families for Revit, that's and sell it as a pack or something, or an updatable subscription, that would be money right there, depending on the cost. But yeah, I don't know. It's got its pros and cons. So,
do you guys have? Actually, another question I'll ask later, but do you guys use any special plugins or scripts, or is everything you're doing working inside of vanilla Revit?
We use a lot, like bird tools. We use parameter jammer. Mostly.
Can you give me just like a two-liner on what each of those things do?
Well, so Bird Tools is a new one, I think, for clash detection. I don't know if you're familiar with clash detection, but it pretty much just tells you if you have a speaker that's overlapping a mechanical duct, it's going to hit. It tells you to fix it. Pretty cool if you're modeling in a 3D space with other disciplines. The plenum's too shallow for that. You need to move it over 2 inches or whatever. But again, my plans are conceptual. So where I show a speaker, it's not dimensioned on there. So I'm just showing like, hey, relative, put it there. So it's not that big of a thing. The one that I use the most is PyRevit. This one here. PyRevit allows you to generate keynotes in a very efficient way. I don't know if you've done Keynote. It's not going to work because I don't have it set up right now. But I don't know if you've messed with keynotes in Revit yet, but it's most, I don't know, rudimentary thing, I guess, that they have. It's done with text, the text document, whatever it's called, WordPad, in Microsoft. So you actually have to go through there and you have to type it out and create the spaces properly. And it's almost like doing code, but just with text. And if you don't create the right number of spaces, it breaks the file and whatnot. And the problem is that if you have multiple people trying to create keynotes for their drawings, only one person could edit that document at a time. So with PyRevit, it bypasses all that and creates just an easy to use plugin to generate keynotes. And I wish I could show you, but unfortunately this I'm not connected to our VPN, so I can't access a lot of these features that we have.
What's a keynote?
But everything else. A keynote, it's I think I broke the computer here. Essentially, it is well, here, let me see if I can show you something. I'll show you a finished.
I'm mindful that we're going over an hour of your time. Are you okay to keep talking for a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Or I need to let you go?
For a bit. I do need to jump off here in a minute just because I have a golf tournament in the mornings. But
ooh,
yeah, nice. That's all right though. Come on. We got these fancy computers recently they're called BIM boxes. They're bench tested strictly to run Revit efficiently and fast. And I swear I have more problems with those than I did with the Microsoft Surface.
Yeah, I know. I think Windows is to blame for a lot. I don't understand how I can have a computer that's 100 times more powerful than what I had 5 years ago, and I still can't scroll a PDF properly.
Right? Yeah, especially a PDF.
Like,
Like for some reason, those are
like,
power hungry. I don't
they
understand.
they are. You get like a dense PDF from an architect, and it still brings. I swear I could have a quantum computer, and I still can't smoothly zoom in and scroll through a PDF.
Yeah, we have an issue where if the PDF was if it was done in like Adobe Acrobat, that sometimes Bluebeam, I don't know if you use Bluebeam, but Bluebeam won't open it. It won't be visible. It just opens up a white page or something. I don't know. It's like you said, it's 2025. That stuff should be fixed.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to show you, but essentially my computer just kind of crashed out on me here. But oh, here I can show you here. You see? I don't know. Can you see that?
Oh yeah. I see that. Just
Yeah.
like a
So
call out or like a note. Yeah.
yeah. So we use that to like. So in this space, like I'll have a floor plan and I show the devices, and then I add a keynote A5 that says see this detail 2E504 for the riser diagram for that room. So that way they know, okay, if I go to 2E504, was that 504? Yeah, 500 series of details.
Right.
That detail, yeah. And so there's the riser for that room. And then, you know, the front page had the schedule on it. So, but yeah, that's what they are. I use keynotes primarily for riser to call out where the riser diagram is the detail for that view.
Any other
or for that
plugins?
plan. No, that's pretty much it. I think Revit is really the big one that I use. Now, our company, we have a, you know, if you're a big enough company using Revit, architectural firms, big MEP firms, they will have typically now a VDC, virtual design and construction staff that will, their whole job is to create plugins to make our jobs efficiently. So, you know, we have some up here. You see our company name. Those are plugins that our VDC team has made specifically to make my job easier. So it's something as simple as like loading a family into the project. Instead of having me go to the insert tab and then go to load family, then find the folder directory where those families are created, they created a button where I can just say PEC AV, click on that, boom, that family, all my families are there, and I can just click on the one as like a graphical touch panel. I can just click on the button I want and it imports it in. So, you know, there's a
So it's basically there's an unlimited wormhole of constant optimization, family creation, modification. Like it's an ongoing mission, isn't it? Really, it's not like this is our system set up now and this is how we do it.
yeah, it's almost like an open platform where they just created this, you know, open user interface that anybody can customize to their liking. The APIs, they give you access to everything. I think is API the right word? Yeah, I think to be able to customize that plugin. But yeah, so our guys will sit there and work with the APIs available with Revit to create plugins. It's very open as long as you know what you're doing. This thing could do. I mean, it's a powerhouse of a program. But again, it's not out of the box designed for low voltage AV. The team I'm on, we do all low voltage AV, data telecom, access control, nurse call, all that stuff. Very few of it is designed out of the box with Revit. We've had to create our families, create our annotations, all that stuff from scratch. But almost everybody had to do that when they went to CAD for the first time. So it's not something new. It's just, do you want to change something? If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, you know. It's hard to, I would say the benefit, like, did we have to switch to Revit? No. But it just made it easier from a licensing. Instead of having to give everybody AutoCAD and Revit licensing for every year, we just did the Revit because architects work exclusively in Revit, like you were mentioning. So it's just easier for us to work in one program, and I've just had to adapt my riser diagrams to fit that. Could I have done it just as quickly in CAD? Probably. Not maybe with the scheduling, but it looks way nicer in Revit. Scheduling in CAD when I first started was a nightmare. I actually had to create the lines of the schedule and like insert text and make sure it was like centered properly. And if you looked at it from a distance, the text you could tell was just everything was not aligned properly, and there wasn't a real easy way to do that. So from a professionalism standpoint, it's great to go with Revit. And plus you can, I'm going to stop sharing because it's broken.
Yeah.
You can link in all the different disciplines. So if you guys are just doing AV in Revit, but MEP firm over here is doing mechanical, electrical, and the architect over here is doing architect, you can link in real time all of their projects. So as they're placing duct and they sync, you see that change in your project. So it makes it super easy from that standpoint as well. So, but that's common stuff with Revit. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this subject is I'm doing consulting for a large integrator, and they're basically keen to move over to Revit. And whether I recommend they go to AutoCAD or or do the schematics in Revit is kind of one of the last few things I'm not quite decided on what's the best advice to give them. And as part of this, I've got building a team of guys to help them with their transition. And so one thing that I had identified already was that the families was going to be a big piece of this. And so essentially I'm going to offer as part of the service as a sort of an ongoing support model, the building of the families and things, so their designers can just focus on building doing the actual projects and try and make them as fast as possible. So I'm close, but then I'm interested. Then, like you say, you're doing these riser diagrams, but then they would get to the level where they need to put cable IDs and things on everything. So I still there's still a little, but like I really want to have it all in Revit. Like you say, AutoCAD is just another license, and it makes sense to have everything all in one platform. But I still wonder whether when we start getting into the extreme detail, whether it's going to be viable or not. I mean, one advantage is we've got so much stuff going to IP that you can break a lot of things down into much smaller pieces now. You don't necessarily have to have everything on one page, and so maybe that's a way to is taking a fresh look at how we do schematics, and maybe not everything in the room is on that one page. Maybe that makes it harder to read. I don't know, or maybe it's the riser diagram is the signal flow, and then some of that details captured elsewhere. Maybe the I don't know, the cable IDs are part of the family block, and then that gets punched out as a schedule, or maybe there's another way that we can include that detail that they need without having to necessarily draw it straight onto the schematic. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a ton. I can think of a ton of different ways to do it, but as far as what I see from shop drawings that get submitted that I have to approve from integrators, they 99% of the time just recreate the whole riser diagram. Very few times do they, and I don't know if this was a thing back in the past, but architects request me to export my things as DWG sometimes. Sometimes the contractors will request DWG files. And I can export this as a DWG, but sometimes things get lost, and I think they'll manipulate those. But most of the time they end up just creating their whole new riser. And I've honestly thought about, when I first started using Revit, do I want to use Revit for everything but my risers and continue to use CAD just for my risers? Because there's no overlap. Everything I do on my riser is exclusive to the riser diagram. It's not tied to any other view, elevation, plan, or anything like that. I make it from scratch on the riser. I could do that in CAD and just insert DWG and just put it on the sheet. But then if I need to make a small tweak, I got to go back to CAD, make that change, reload it, all that stuff. I also thought about some of those companies that are selling their design, their schematic design program, but I haven't found any that easily link to Revit without having to do it. I don't like having to go back and forth. You saw how my computer runs just trying to run Revit sometimes. Having to have two programs open would be a nightmare, I think, sometimes. So,
yeah. Unfortunately, I think maybe the perfect answer doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. I don't know. I like using Revit. I'm a big proponent for it. I think you can do it in Revit. It just, like you said, it takes that that big leap at first, and then once you're done, it's very, very efficient. I think I work faster in Revit with the shortcut keys, honestly, than I did with CAD. But the problems I had in CAD, I have the same problems, but less in Revit, to be honest with you.
That's that's really interesting. I won't. I'm again mindful of your time. You've got a very important day tomorrow, but that was super helpful and super interesting. So I really do appreciate you taking time, Jeremy, to talk to me and show me all that. I got a lot out of that.
Yeah, no problem. That was kind of fun. I felt like